Welcome to the On-Air Philosophy Channel. Do you know that the world AI hegemony is assembling? Today we are going to invite the founder of deconstructionism, French philosopher Jacques Derrida, to teach us how to counter AI hegemony, deconstruct digital totalitarianism, and formulate AI laws that always point towards social justice.
Thank you so much for having me.
I mean, imagine typing a question into a chatbot right now and feeling like you just spoke to the Oracle of Delphi. It's intoxicating, right?
Oh, absolutely. It feels magical.
Yeah, but what if that oracle is just, a sophisticated statistical parlor trick, one designed by a powerful few to control how you think, how you vote, and what you buy?
That's exactly the concern we are raising.
Right. So today we are attempting something completely mind-bending. We are examining the explosion of large language models through a uniquely Derridean lens. And to help us decode all of this, I'm joined by the theorist behind the ideas we are unpacking today. Welcome to the deep dive.
Thanks. It really is a privilege to be here. We've spent, a great deal of time looking at the intersection of classical philosophy and the architecture of modern neural networks.
And it's fascinating stuff.
We think so. And the deeper we dig, the more we realize that the crisis of artificial intelligence isn't just a technical one. It is a profound philosophical crisis that we are, honestly, entirely unprepared for.
I love how you frame that, because when you turn on the news, it's all about processing power, right? Data centers, stock prices.
Exactly, the hardware and the money.
Yeah. But your perspective drags us back to the roots of Western thought. You argue that to understand what big tech is trying to build right now, we have to look at a 2,000-year-old obsession called the Metaphysics of Presence. Okay, let's unpack this. What is the Metaphysics of Presence, and why should anyone scrolling on their phone care?
To put it simply, the metaphysics of presence is the human craving for an absolute, unmediated truth. A firm center, if you will.
A firm center.
Right. For centuries, we have desperately wanted a solid foundation that we can point to and say, there it is, that is reality, completely unfiltered.
Like we want the voice from the burning bush.
Exactly. We want that direct line. And this is deeply tied to a related concept called logocentrism.
Logocentrism.
Yeah, it's the belief that logic, or even spoken words, can directly and purely reflect this ultimate reality without any distortion, without any bias.
So just pure objective truth.
Right. From Plato all the way to modern science, humanity has sort of been chasing this direct line to objective truth.
So we are essentially hardwired, intellectually speaking, to look for this ultimate authority, like an oracle that can just hand us the final answer.
Precisely. Now, if you map that historical craving onto today's large language models, it's very revealing. In our view, the politico-economic hegemony, the massive tech monopolies and their political allies,
the big players,
right, they are actively constructing these LLMs as the ultimate logocentric machine. Think about the user interface of a modern chatbot. You ask a complex, messy human question, and out comes this perfectly formatted, highly confident, bullet-pointed answer.
Yeah, it sounds so sure of itself.
It does. It synthesizes centuries of human civilization into a single voice. It simulates an all-knowing center.
Okay, let's unpack this with an analogy. It's totally like the Wizard of Oz. You walk into the Emerald City, and you're confronted with this booming, centralized voice, the flames, the giant floating head.
The full spectacle.
Right. It projects absolute presence and unquestionable authority. The UI is designed to make you completely forget you were looking at a machine.
That analogy captures the dynamic perfectly. But the real danger lies in what building that wizard actually requires behind the scenes.
What do you mean?
Well, in philosophical terms, whenever you try to create a perfect totality, a closed, all-encompassing system that claims to explain everything, that system inherently requires violence.
Wait, violence. When you say violence, you don't mean like the Terminator stepping on a human skull, right? You mean something structural.
Yes, we mean this systemic violence of erasure. To construct a seamless totality, you have to exclude what Derrida calls the other.
The other, so anything outside the norm.
Exactly. You must silence the marginalized voices, the messy human contradictions, the cultural outliers that just, they don't neatly fit into the algorithm's dominant logic.
So if a piece of data doesn't conform to the hegemony's centralized worldview, what actually happens to it?
It is smoothed over, it's penalized in the training weights, or it is simply deleted entirely. A totality demands purity. and purity always demands exclusion.
So by presenting AI as this flawless, neutral center of all knowledge, the companies building these models are inherently erasing anyone who doesn't fit their specific, highly profitable mold.
That is exactly what we're arguing, yes.
But wait, I have a hard time buying that this is all just an illusion. I think you listening right now might be feeling this too. I mean, it passes the bar exam.
Sure, it's impressive.
It writes poetry. It diagnoses diseases better than some doctors do. How can you look at that level of capability and say it's just a projection? If AI is just a mirror of signs and traces, why does it feel so powerfully real? Why are we so threatened by a reflection?
That feeling, that overwhelming sense of reality, is the most critical illusion we have to dismantle. We must recognize a fundamental, non-negotiable limit here.
Which is?
AI is merely a digital simulation. It must never, ever be treated as a true entity in the philosophical sense.
A true entity?
Yes. In Chinese philosophical terms, we use the word shik. It means true substance or a living entity.
Okay, so what separates a true entity, a shik, from, a trillion parameter neural network? They seem pretty similar on the surface.
They do, but the difference is profound. A true entity, which is characteristic of human consciousness, has the profound capacity to negate its own world. It can actively create a broader one.
Negate its own world?
Yeah, a human being can look at their programming, their environment, their biological imperatives, and simply say no. They can imagine a completely unprecedented future. AI cannot do this. Its so-called self-evolution is nothing but a mirror.
Just a mirror.
Right. It is a highly complex reflection of human civilization and the specific minds, biases, and goals of its developers. It cannot negate its training data. It can only remix it.
So it's not thinking, it's just reflecting.
Yeah.
But if that's the case, we really need to look at how that reflection actually works under the hood. Because let's be honest, it's a very convincing reflection.
It is. And to truly see the mirror for what it is, we turn to one of Derrida's most famous concepts, difference.
Difference.
Yes, and that is spelled deliberately with an A in French, D-I-F-A-R-A-N-C-E. It combines two distinct ideas: spatial difference and temporal deferral.
Spatial difference and temporal deferral. Okay, get that to me in plain English. How does a French philosophical term from the 1960s explain the chatbot I'm using on my phone today?
It actually explains the exact mathematical mechanism of the technology.
Really?
Yes. When an AI generates text, it does not understand the truth of the words. Instead, in its architecture, every word or concept is turned into a mathematical token, and these tokens are plotted in a massive, high-dimensional vector space.
So it's basically a giant map of dots.
Exactly. The AI understands a word only by its spatial difference from millions of other words. It calculates the mathematical distance between the word king and the word queen. That is the spatial difference.
Oh, wow. So it literally maps out the differences in space.
It does, and the temporal deferral part, that happens when the AI actually generates a sentence.
How so?
Well, it predicts the next word and then the next word, endlessly deferring the ultimate meaning down a chain of statistical probabilities.
It's just guessing the next most likely dot on the map.
Right. It never arrives at a solid absolute truth. Every single output you read is just a trace.
A trace.
Yeah, a statistical leftover footprint of past human inputs. It is endless traces, endlessly deferred, based entirely on spatial differences.
That is incredible. So the AI doesn't know what a dog is. It just calculates the mathematical distance between the token for dog and the token for bark and defers the output based on probability.
You've got it completely.
It is literally just difference rendered in silicon. But wait, if it's just math and statistical footprints, why are we so terrified of it? Why does it feel like an existential threat to society?
Because the existential threat does not come from the math itself.
It doesn't.
No. The threat comes from the politico-economic hegemony, attempting to convince you that this mathematical reflection is an autonomous, authoritative entity.
They want us to think it's alive.
Exactly. They want you to believe the mirror is a god. And why? Because if you believe the algorithm is an omniscient, objective truth teller, you will obey it.
Wow. Yeah, you will.
You'll let it dictate your credit score, your hiring practices, your political realities. You will surrender your data and your money to it without a second thought.
Ah. So the danger isn't the wizard's machine. The danger is that the wizard is successfully convincing everyone in Oz that the machine is actual magic.
That's spot on. Let's take that a step further, though. By recognizing AI as just endless difference, a shifting network of statistical traces without a true center, you completely strip away its mythical authority.
You break the spell.
Right. You realize that knowledge itself is a dynamic, ever-shifting network. When you understand that there is no absolute center hiding inside the server farm, You neutralize the hegemony's claim to absolute truth.
The wizard loses his power the exact second you see the levers. That is incredibly empowering. It shifts us from being, passive victims of a new technology to active, critical dismantlers of it.
Exactly. We become active participants.
Which begs the question, if this AI is just a network of traces controlled by a powerful minority, what is the actual tool we can use to break their digital totalitarianism?
The tool is Derrida's core method, deconstruction.
Deconstruction. Okay, How do we use that here?
Well, the hegemony goes to great lengths to present the AI system as complete, self-sufficient, and fully autonomous. But deconstruction teaches us that no system is ever truly closed or whole.
There's always a crack.
Always. And to break the illusion, we must always look for the supplément, or, in French, the supplément.
The supplement. What is the supplement in the context of big tech and AI?
A supplement is something added to fill a lack or a void. It is the hidden crutch that proves the main system cannot stand on its own. The tech companies want you to believe the AI is a standalone, super-intelligent brain. But look at the physical reality. Look at the supplement.
Which is what? The data.
The data, yes.
Yeah.
The AI requires massive, continuous scraping of the internet just to stay relevant. But more importantly, it requires invisible armies of human workers.
Oh, right. The content moderation farms.
Yes. Often underpaid laborers in places like Kenya or the Philippines. They're doing the reinforcement learning, they're labeling toxic data and tweaking the algorithms just to stop the machine from generating horrific output.
All the human feedback loops.
Exactly. All of that human labor, all of that constant patching, that is the supplement. And the very existence of this supplement proves that the original AI system is inherently incomplete. It's flawed. And it's lacking.
Because if it were truly a perfect oracle, it wouldn't need a million humans behind the scenes constantly turning the dials.
Precisely. The need for the supplement exposes the lie of its perfection.
This makes me think of Derrida's most famous and honestly probably most misunderstood catchphrase, il n'y a pas de haut texte, usually translated as there is no outside text.
The very famous line.
Right, and people usually think that means he was saying physical reality doesn't exist, that we all just live inside a giant book, which, sounds ridiculous.
It does sound ridiculous when taken completely out of context.
So what does it actually mean for us?
In our perspective, there is no outside text does not mean trees and rocks don't exist. It means that everything, our institutions, our laws, our algorithms, and these massive digital empires, is part of a constructed network of interpretation.
Okay, so it's all connected meaning.
Right. There is no absolute objective reality you can stand on to perfectly judge the system. You are always already inside a network of human meaning.
Okay, let's ground that. Here's where it gets really interesting for the listener. If I'm a programmer at a major tech company and I'm writing the safety protocols for a new AI, deciding what topics it's allowed to discuss, what jokes it's allowed to tell, what political opinions it should suppress, I am literally writing the text.
Yes, you are.
The algorithm isn't objective math handed down from the cosmos. It is a text written by specific people with specific cultural biases in a very specific historical moment.
That is the core realization we want to push. And because the algorithm is a text, it can be deconstructed.
Boom.
To break the digital totalitarianism of the AI hegemony, we must continuously expose the contradictions within their code.
We have to find the gaps.
Exactly. We must highlight the biases embedded in those safety protocols. We must look at the margins and actively amplify the marginalized data, the alternative voices that the algorithm attempts to erase in its quest for a smooth totality.
By treating the algorithm as a flawed text rather than a digital god, you empower every single user to become a deconstructor of the system. You, listening to this right now, aren't just a passive data point for surveillance. You are a reader, a critic.
Absolutely.
When the AI gives you an answer, you don't just accept it as reality. You ask, what is being left out? Who is being marginalized by this perfectly formatted paragraph? What hidden supplement is propping up this code?
That active questioning stance is the very essence of deconstruction. And we argue it's the only way to resist the totality the hegemony wants to impose on us.
But pushing back on a personal level is one thing. If we zoom out, we have to figure out how to guide the future of this technology on a societal level.
Yes, the structural level is crucial.
Governments are scrambling right now. Tech CEOs are testifying before Congress, practically begging for regulation, which, conveniently, usually happens to be regulation that protects their own monopolies by raising the barrier to entry.
Of course it is.
So how do we formulate AI laws that actually point towards social justice rather than just cementing the current power structure?
To navigate this, we draw on Derrida's critical distinction between two concepts: law, which in French is droit, and justice.
Law versus justice. I think intuitively we all feel the friction between those two, but how do we define the difference when it comes to AI?
Well, droit, or law, is calculable. It is institutionalized.
Like the rules on paper.
Yes. It is the realm of rigid rules, compliance checklists, government regulations, and corporate terms of service. Law always represents an authorized force.
It's enforced by someone with power.
Exactly. It has a specific history, it was written by people who hold power, and it inherently carries a kind of violence because it strictly enforces boundaries. The current regulations being pushed by the AI hegemony are exactly this calque: law designed to maintain control and predictability.
Okay, so law is the rigid cage. What is justice then?
Justice is infinite. It is completely uncalculable.
Uncalculable.
Right. Justice is not a rule you can just write down in a PDF. It relates to our absolute unconditional responsibility to the other. Justice is the experience of the impossible.
Wait, it's impossible. How is that a helpful framework for lawmakers? Let me try an analogy here. Justice is like the horizon.
The horizon, I like that.
Yeah, you can walk toward it forever, you can use it to navigate, but you can never actually catch it and put it in a box. The moment you write down a law, you've put a fence up, you've caged it, and it stops being pure justice.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it, because existing and future AI rules are historically constructed by those in power because they are just fences, as you say. They are inherently deconstructible.
They can be taken apart.
Exactly. In fact, Derrida states famously, deconstruction is justice.
Deconstruction is justice. That is a massive statement. So we achieve justice not by building a perfect law, but by constantly tearing down the flaws in the laws we have.
Precisely. It means that to formulate AI laws that truly serve humanity, we must ensure these legal frameworks are never, ever permanently closed.
They have to stay flexible.
Right. The moment a tech monopoly or a government says, we have solved AI ethics, here is the final permanent law, they have created a new totality. They've created a new system of structural violence.
Because they've stopped looking for who they are excluding.
Exactly. True AI laws must constantly be deconstructed, questioned, and revised in the face of new, unforeseen consequences. The law must remain permanently restless.
It can never get comfortable. But practically speaking, how do we design systems that operate like that?
We argue that AI development must practice what Derrida calls unconditional hospitality. Hospitality inconditionnel.
Unconditional hospitality. Usually when we talk about hospitality, we mean like welcoming a guest into our home. In the context of computer science and massive server farms, what does that actually look like?
It means keeping our algorithmic systems and our legal frameworks radically open to the absolute other and open to the unforeseen future, what Derrida calls venir, or the to come.
So staying open to what we can't predict.
Exactly. The hegemony wants to lock human potential into a predictable, highly profitable, closed loop. They want to map your psychological profile, predict your behavior, feed you the perfect targeted ad, and just control the political narrative without any surprises.
They want a world with zero friction.
Yes, and a world without friction is a world without freedom. Unconditional hospitality means designing systems that allow for unpredictability, for human spontaneity, for the bizarre, the divergent, and the truly new.
We have to break the loop.
We must refuse to close the loop. We have to leave the door open for the future that cannot be calculated by a neural network.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? The next time you open an app or read an AI-generated summary, it means that you have to approach every interaction not with blind, passive trust, but with a deconstructive mindset.
Absolutely.
You have to constantly question whose logic is being prioritized. You have to ask, is this system practicing unconditional hospitality to human diversity, or is it a closed loop trying to predict and contain me?
And if we connect this to the broader societal picture, it really is a call for an entirely new kind of digital citizenship.
A much more active one.
Right. It requires us to abandon our comfort with easy answers. The hegemony thrives on our innate desire for the metaphysics of presence, our desire for the AI to just give us the right answer so we don't have to do the hard work of thinking.
We want the shortcut.
Yes, but deconstruction demands that we take on the infinite responsibility of thinking for ourselves. We must constantly look for the marginalized trace.
It is about refusing to let the machine do the philosophy for us.
That is the core of it. We must use deconstruction not just as some abstract academic exercise, but as a daily, practical method of resistance against digital totalitarianism.
I love that.
We must ensure that the laws we build for AI are always subject to revision, always striving for that uncalculable horizon of justice, and always hospitable to venir, the future that is yet to come.
This has been an absolutely incredible journey through these ideas. Let's briefly recap where we've been, because we covered a massive amount of ground today.
We really did.
We started by seeing through the metaphysics of presence, this thousands of years old illusion pushed by big tech that AI is an all-knowing oracle. We learned to recognize AI not as a sentient entity, not as a shikni, but as a mere digital simulation of difference.
An endless network of mathematical traces.
Right, spatial differences and deferred meanings. We explored how to actively use deconstruction, looking for the human supplément, and treating the algorithm as a flawed, biased text to actively dismantle digital totalitarianism.
Exactly.
And finally, we looked at how distinguishing between calculable law and infinite justice can help us keep the future open through unconditional hospitality.
It is a profound shift in perspective.
Yeah.
And our hope is that by applying this lens, we can equip individuals with the philosophical tools necessary to navigate and resist the enclosures of this new era.
Well, before we go, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought to mull over on your own. We've spent this entire time talking about how AI is a mirror, reflecting our own data, our own civilization, our own biases back at us.
It's all a reflection.
If AI is truly just a digital simulation reflecting humanity, perhaps the looming world AI hegemony we fear so much is actually just a dark mirror of our own human desire to control, to categorize, and to dominate everything around us.
That's a chilling thought.
Right. If we let go of our own obsession with finding an absolute center in our lives, if we stop demanding that the universe give us a single, easy answer to complex problems, does the power of digital totalitarianism simply vanish? Does the wizard only have power because we desperately want to believe in magic? Thank you for listening. We hope this has inspired you. See you next time.